The following material is presented by Alberta Employment Standards employees for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as a source of legal advice.
This video is a plain language outline to provide the general information about the enforcement process. Terms used to describe certain processes, documents, or decisions may be different in formal investigations. The process followed when enforcing employment standards is depicted in this diagram. Process starts when a complaint is filed with employment standards or an employer is identified for a general inspection. Note that prosecution through the courts is possible for making an untrue or fraudulent complaint. Next, an officer notifies the employer of the investigation or inspection and issues a formal demand for the employer to produce payroll records. The employer will be given a specific time period to do so. The officer also provides the employer with an inspection notice to be posted in a prominent location at the worksite. The notice indicates that an inspection or investigation is underway and must not be removed until the project is complete. The investigation continues when the employer provides the requested records. Prosecution through the courts will be considered for obstructing an officer, falsifying records, making a complaint to an officer knowing it is untrue, or failing to comply with a notice of officer. The officer will review the information provided by the complainant, the records provided from the employer, and any other pertinent information. This may also include interviewing other employees. Based on the evidence, the officer decides whether an employment standards violation has occurred. If the officer has decided no violation has occurred, a non-violation decision is issued. The complainant has the option to appeal the decision. If a violation has occurred, the officer will determine if the employer is a frequent offender. Frequent offenders could be employers that have had numerous complaints registered or decisions and orders issued, or employers that refuse to comply with officer directions or orders. Employment standards may choose to initiate an audit or legal prosecution. Audits of employer records may discover previous unpaid employee earnings. If this occurs, payment for these earnings will be enforced by employment standards officers. After the analysis is concluded, the officer explains the violations that have occurred to the employer and outlines what the employer must do to comply. It is now the employer's responsibility to follow the directions given by the officer and provide proof of compliance. The officer reviews the employer's proof of actions taken and decides whether full compliance with the code has been achieved. This may include payment of monies owed, employee reinstatement, or other steps ordered by the officer or director. If the officer decides that full compliance with employment standards has been met, a compliance met form is issued to all parties. Employers receive documentation confirming compliance has been met, and they're asked to replace the inspection notice issued earlier with the compliance met notice. If the officer has decided that employment standards have not been met, the process moves to the next stage, which may involve one or more actions. An audit, known as a Crown audit, may be performed by a government representative, or a third-party audit may be performed by an external organization. In either case, the employer will be charged the costs of the audit, which can be extensive. Results from an audit are reviewed, and a decision is made whether to proceed with further steps. The officer may issue orders for the employer to pay monies owing, and the director may issue an order to reinstate or compensate the complainant. In either case, an order fee will be charged to the employer. The employer has the option to appeal or to comply with these orders. If the employer does not comply, the issued order is filed with the Provincial Court of Queen's Bench. After this point, collection proceedings will move forward, and no further appeals of the amount assessed by the officer are permitted. Monies may be seized from the employer to satisfy the claim. Employment Standards has the right to place liens on or seize property belonging to the employer, which can include monies from a bank account. Employment standards can also issue a demand to a third party where money is owed to the employer. The employer and the complainant have the option to appeal. The matter could be referred to an external collection agency, which will proceed with collection. Employer property may be seized, and an additional collection fee will apply. Eventually, monies are collected, and seized property assets may be liquidated to cash. The recovered monies are then distributed to the complainant. In some cases, recommendation for prosecution may be provided to Alberta Justice, along with all appropriate information. Alberta Justice reviews the provided information and makes a decision whether to proceed with civil prosecution in the Alberta courts. If so, the employer will be notified and court action will commence.